The town of Hinton respectfully acknowledges that it is located on the First Peoples traditional lands. We recognize this traditional territory to show respect and understanding to those who walked this land since time immemorial. Today, we uphold our ongoing responsibility to work together in the spirit of the intent of the treaties with all First Peoples and nations that call this place home. The town expresses gratitude for the opportunity to build a better community on these sacred lands for generations to come. And with that, the special council meeting for December 7th, 2023 is called to order. Council, are there any additions or deletions from the agenda? Seeing none, administration.
Nothing from administration.
Thank you, administration. Councillor Taylor. Thank you. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that we adopt the agenda for the special meeting of council for December 7th, 2023, please.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. The motion on the floor is to adopt the agenda. Council, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question that council adopt the agenda as presented. Councillors, please vote now. And the electronic voting appears to be functioning.
Okay. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I don't want to hold everyone.
Roger that. That's going to carry unanimously. Which takes us to section 3 of the agenda, new business, and 3.1, the 2024 draft capital budget administration.
Thank you, Mayor. I will turn over to Alicia, but before I do, I just wanted to thank staff, especially Jen, whose heart is still beating from getting this package out in the nick of time. And I'll also just mention that I did promise the budget would be passed today. So if it's if council doesn't, then it's that'd be on you. But I'll pass this on to Alicia.
So starting off, and I'm not sure I like this front and center seat, but I will get used to it. I'll take you back to originally we started out with the capital budget. It's been before council a couple times. There hasn't been any further feedback, so I'm just wanting to bring it up again first off and see if there was any questions on the projects and the carry forward amounts as we are coming to the close of 2023. Or alternatively, any change of heart, direction, or questions on any of the projects for 2024. I'm going through the package that was sent last minute to everyone, so it'll be in the same order, if that makes it easier to follow along.
Thank you, Ms. Bourbeau. Please carry on. Oh, Councillor Taylor.
Is that correct? You were accepting general questions on information?
On the capital budget at this time, absolutely.
Oh, the capital budget. I'm sorry.
Council, anything else further on the capital budget? Seeing nothing, we'll move to item 3.2, the 2024 draft operating budget. Ms. Bourbeau.
So when we met with the committee on December 5th, we were sent back and asked to make a few changes to the budget. First one being the library board, and there was to be a reduction in the allocations to the library board. So we made those changes. We've actually changed the structure and how the library budget flows within our system now. So it's going to have a net zero effect to the town budget. I should have a PDF that is not coming up here to illustrate. So previously, you will see that there was an excess or deficiency, and that essentially was what was being classified as the allocation to the library every year. With the discussion that happened at the meeting on Tuesday night, there was some gray areas and some crossovers. Council's role is for creating the amount of the allocation to the library board, and it is the library board's position to manage their funds and run their operations from that allocation. So in going back and looking at it, we have, this is not going to move up for it. Sorry, this is not in your package. This is just mine. I can send it out separately. But if you see this line right here, government transfers for operating, what is contained in that 395,000 is Town of Hinton allocation of 281,156 and the allocation that the library board receives from Yellowhead County. So putting the town's contribution to the library board in that revenue line, these numbers down here in their budget, those were prepared by the library. I didn't make any adjustments to them. It's not my position to say whether this project may or may not go forward. But by balancing this through this reserve line, that makes the onus on their responsibility to operate within the funds they have. And the net effect here is 0 for the town to manage, and it has no effect on our revenues or expenses throughout the year. At the end of the year, it's a cleaner way, in my opinion, of following through and throughout the months to ensure that they're not overspending from the allocations, because as of right now, funds are commingled in the town bank account. But I'm hoping that this is a cleaner way and will provide a little bit more clarity as to council's role for funding the library and where that money is and how much it is, and the library board's ability to run their operations based on their needs and their business hours, et cetera. So that is the change, and with the 0 at the bottom is the proof that the library allocation is the 281,000, and there's no other effect going through the 2024 budget at this time. Any questions on the library?
Counselor Magoon.
Yeah, and I apologize. I think I'm struggling to understand just a little bit. Does that mean that there's not an impact to how much we're collecting as the town? Like there's not a reduction, like we had reduced the allocation by $170,000. So, I mean, that should create for us an impact of there's $170,000 less that we need to collect from our tax base, correct? So that has an impact of, forgive the simplification, a reduction in taxation because we don't need to collect that much. Is that correct still?
Ms.
Through the-
Borbel.
Through the chair to all of council, that is absolutely correct. Handled this way, it shows the one line going out from council very much as your civic agencies. It's one line that you're reducing, and the rest of these items in here are not having an effect on your expenses.
Okay, thank you.
And as we move through the presentation, you will see where these changes did have an effect on the tax rate.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on library?
Council. Seeing nothing, Ms. Borbel, please move on to the next step.
The other changes that were, let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Maybe not. The other changes that administration was requested to do following Tuesday's meeting, and this is page 8 of your package that was distributed right before the meeting, was to increase the allocation to the Hinton District Chamber of Commerce by $4,000. Reduce the council contingency from $20,000 to $10,000. And a further reduction to council professional development lines, which resulted in about a $10,500 savings or reduction, pardon me. So these changes combined, can I make this bigger for everyone to see? Brings us in our new column for the December 5th budget of now, when we had the meeting before, we were at just over $1 million in taxation, more than 2023 that was required to be raised. Now we're at 700,000, which equates to approximately a 5.35% increase. The effect of a 5.35% increase can be seen on page 9 of your package. And just the very quick summation here on what the effect would be on a residential property with an assessment of 375,000, as well as a non-residential property with an assessment of 450,000. So we're looking at an annual increase on both of those respectively of $114 or $516 per year. In going through all of the budget pages in the last 24 hours, I'll draw your attention to this line on the page. It is the investment income line, and I've put 2 asterisks by there. In reviewing that, there potentially should be an adjustment to that or an increase to the revenue. Now, right now, this amount over budget or the amount received over what had been budgeted, providing its council's wishes, a large percentage of that will either go to add interest onto the reserves throughout the year, funding all of them, or to be put away for the 2025 invoice for the RCMP wage, salary, and benefit adjustment costs that went through. We did defer that invoice until Q1 of 2025. I believe in the presentation back then, we suggested that good management of our investment incomes could result in almost being able to pay that $500,000 invoice in total through our interest on investments or the money sitting in reserves. But in discussions with CAO Panasik, if we were to increase this budget line by $100,000, that would offset the tax rate by a further 0.74%, leaving it a tax rate increase of 4.46% for the year. And I'm sorry, I didn't get the comparisons or the calculations done on that one. And with that, unless there's questions from council, I believe CEO Panasik has us.
Thank you, Ms. Bourbeau. We'll get to the council questions first, if that's okay. Council Race. Oh,
Mr. Mayor, so referring to page 8, your surplus at the bottom left,
Yes.
would that be an actual? Would we be seeing that actual surplus?
So with that, yes, there is a good tendency for that, and I would hope there would be, because we did have investment income far greater than what we had budgeted for. So that line alone. Also, there was some over budgeting potentially, or some underutilized budgeting lines in the wages, salaries, and benefits. Those we went through line by line for the 2024 budget and squeezed out as much as we could there. That's where you're seeing about a 1.7% increase, where cost of living through the collective bargaining agreement is at minimum 2%. So we have really identified and tried very hard to take those out. So that's not carried forward in the future budget year after budget year. Also, I will caution you, in this surplus, I have included the November and December utility revenues, but those will not be invoiced until January and collected probably into February. So it is a surplus, but it's not a cash surplus for us by the end of December. The same with some of our taxation. We'll need to look at where our collections are at and see what's still outstanding. So I feel this is a far more detailed and more thoughtful estimate of where we could end up. But I do caution you that we're mixing accrual-based accounting and cash-based accounting when we're doing this exercise.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Alicia.
Councillor Taylor.
Thanks. You saved me asking the interest rate question. However, I still have a question. I have 2 questions about what you've talked about. That increase of 100,000, that seems like too little to me, because I know with my GICs, they've gone up to 5%. 2 or 3 years ago, they were 2%, and then they're slowly being increasing. So it seems like the increase should be bigger than 100,000. Can you explain how you came up with $100,000 increase?
Through the chair to all of council, conservative, which is my nature. Also not wanting to come across as kind of directionary at this point. This document has been before council a number of times, and we're wanting to be respectful of the process. We bring it forward as a suggestion. Also in the back of my mind, if we were to budget higher, I would respectfully request a corresponding amount to be increased into reserves so that we are putting away for that 2025 invoice that's coming due.
And this 397, that was going into, before it was going into general revenue, correct?
Through the chair to all council, no, investment income always is allocated to all of the reserves. So our reserves amount grow by a proportionate amount of interest. That interest does not go into general revenues.
Can you ask another follow-up?
Go
Is that
ahead,
one of the
Councillor Taylor.
reasons why the reserves have gone up by $100,000 to $140,000 over what the reserves were last year? Like last year, we had reserves at 2.7. This year, we've got reserves at 2.8. Is that one of the reasons why they've gone up?
Through the chair, if I may clarify, a budgeted amount of 2.8 or
The money we're putting into reserves has gone up by,
through the chair to all of council. So we did have it increased in this line to the 2.8. This line is our November 28th. And the reason why it was up to 2.8 and that is because I hadn't put the monies that the library was returning, the original $104,000 that had been talked about. I did increase the reserves by that amount. The line next to it now, you'll see where I have brought those down to, I find my spot, to in line with 2023.
okay.
Because we reduced the library allocation by both the amounts that had been discussed.
Okay, that saves that question.
Thank you,
You did
Ms.
have a question on what she did before, but I can wait till other people ask a question.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. CEO Panasic, did you have something to add?
The only thing I was going to say is it is a conservative estimate, but our GICs rise and fall typically with interest rates. So just as an example, in 2021, we made about 169,000. 2022, we were, I think, just shy of 600 or 590. So we think that coming in right around 500 is conservative. But I think this year was an anomaly with the interest rates and they are expected to fall in 2024. But we think that we can comfortably come in at that number. But there are other factors that that will affect that. How Alicia is able to manage her investment portfolio on the maturity dates, the timing of the assets, and what she needs in terms of performance of the portfolio versus the liquidity that we need at that time. Because typically the first half of the year when interest rates in 2024 are high, our priority for our investment portfolio is liquidity. And then once the tax rates come in on the tail end of the year, our priority typically is performance because we can set aside what we've received in taxes adequately into longer term GICs. So that's just a little bit more context around our investment portfolio, but I think that coming in right around that 500 mark is an accurate conservative estimate.
Thank you, CEO Panasic. Councillor Chambers.
Through the mayor. I just want to clarify, because I think I might not be on the right track. So was the suggestion that the investment income of 397, that amount be increased by $100,000 to offset the tax rate? Is that, or use $100,000 of that?
Through the chair to all of council, no, that would be to increase our estimated revenue, which
Okay.
would then decrease the tax.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for the clarity.
Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would actually like to make that motion then. I'd like to move that council direct administration to increase line item 1-1-550 investment income to reflect a total of $497,353. Mr. Mayor, can I just clarify with admin first if that sort of aligns with their view?
Yes, administration, is that in line with the recommendation?
Through to council, uncomfortable with that, CAO Panasa?
Thank you. Can carry on, Councillor Magoon.
This is a really easy one to speak to. Thanks a lot. Merry Christmas, everybody. That was not what I expected to have show up on our plate. So you know what? Good job. And I appreciate that accurate or trying to be accurate with the predictions because it certainly makes the prospect of budgeting for this year a lot easier when you have $100,000 more in the predicted income line. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, the motion on the floor is that council direct administration to increase line item 1, TAC 550, investment income to reflect a total of $497,350,000. Councillor Taylor.
That by itself doesn't reduce the tax rate for this year. Correct?
Through the chair to all of council. If we make that change, it will reduce by approximately 0.74% of the tax rate.
Without any further direction.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Council, anything further? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question that council direct administration to increase line item 1, TAC 550, investment income to reflect a total of $497,350,000. Councillors, please vote now.
I'm in favor.
And that motion passes.
Sorry, I don't.
And that motion passes unanimously. Administration, on to the next item.
Through to all of council, just any other questions or directions on the operating budget?
CEO Panasic.
Thank you, Chair. If I could, there was a few further directions related to utilities. So if we would like, we can go through that information now. That's located at the end of your package, and we could have that discussion now.
Thank you, CEO Panasic. Can we get Councillor Race before we move on?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I do have a question on the insurance increase that we talked about several weeks ago. So I wanted to have a discussion with council about that. So in our operating budget, we're going to spend $125,000 on our asset management program. $125,000. Our buildings are assets to us. So it's saying right now we're paying, I don't have the exact numbers, but we're paying $300 and some thousand in premiums. Our insurance people are saying to us we should be paying $600 and some. So the recommendation was $50,000 for this year, and that would take care of the tiny homes, the water treatment, and one other area.
Through to all of council, the golf course clubhouse, I believe,
Right,
was the other
right.
asset.
Right. So I wanted to talk to council about, just to get their opinion on, should we, I just don't understand why we would not want our buildings to have proper amount of insurance on them. So if anybody on council would like to have this discussion.
Councillor Taylor.
I don't want to have the discussion. I believe we've already had that discussion and we'd agreed to delay that increase until such time as we could have a broader discussion on insurance where information could be brought to us and we could talk about the whole package in a more informed nature. There were questions that were getting asked here that we couldn't get answers to, and that would get better discussed when we can concentrate on that. So, we've talked about this for 5 or 10 minutes already. I think we're going to end up in the same spot and we're going to waste time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Race.
Thank you, sir. I don't think it's a waste of time, and we're talking about money that we're gonna spend on our buildings to have the proper insurance that they require. I don't think that is a waste of time. What I do want to ask administration is, why was it the tiny homes, the golf course, and the water treatment? Why not a building like this that is so important to our town, or the infrastructure?
Administration?
Through the chair to all of council, in part because those would be the newest assets that we were working with insurance on, so the ones that have the most accurate current information on. We're doing assessments and square foot valuations on all of the buildings. That was just a starting point suggested by insurance, but it was truly only because as they've been added, we have the most pertinent information on those.
So just one real quick one. So do you have any idea when you would be able to bring that information back to us so that we can get the proper amount of insurance on all of our buildings?
Through to all of council, I don't have a date. I know it's being worked on actively. I can certainly find out and get some timelines and pass them on to CAO Panasic, and he can bring them forward for general discussion.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Borbo. Council, anything further? Seeing nothing, administration, let's please move on as the CEO suggested.
Okay.
Council, this would be starting on page 18, I believe.
Okay, so council tasked us to do up two different documents on utilities. The first one in front of you, starting on page 18, is information on sewer and waste management. Previously, when we looked at these budgets, we had them both sitting in a deficit of approximately 150,000 and change. When we looked at sewer, we decided that having the amortization cost in addition to the reserves of 234,000 in the cost is wasn't fair to the sewer budget. And so we're recommending that we relook at sewer with a new lens of not having the amortization in the cost, because we already have a transfer to reserve in there. And so with that lens, sewer is actually in a surplus situation at the current charges. As we looked into waste management, we prepared two options for you to look at. The first option we prepared was taking the $154,000 in deficit and spreading it across the waste accounts that pay us our fees. And so there was 3,389 of those accounts, and that would translate to a $44.65 or $44.65 additional yearly per account. And then when you take it over 6 billing cycles, that would be an increase of $7.44 bi-monthly to get our waste to a break-even point. The second option we put in front of you is essentially trying to make the recycling stand on its own 2 feet. So what we did was we took the cost that recycling is in our budget for recycling of 414,000, and we put it across the same 3,389 accounts, and that would be an additional $122.15 per account holder. And when you divide that by the 6 billing cycles, it would be an increase of $20.36 on your bi-monthly bill. So we put those two options in front of council to consider, depending on how you wanted to look at it. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on that one.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Council. Counselor Taylor.
So option A, the $7 for 44 cents every 2 months takes their $75 bill up to $82 bill. That brings the waste account to a revenue neutral cost breaking even stage. And that covers the recycling. That covers, and most of that deficit was due to recycling.
That is correct. Like if you take off recycling, our garbage collection currently is generating revenue towards general operations. And then when you put in the recycling, it turns into a deficit. So option one takes that whole waste management category to zero by doing that $7 increase. So everything you said was correct.
Well, then I'm confused. Why would option 2 be more expensive? Why couldn't option 2 just be, we put part of the, put part of the recycling bill on the utility, this just part of it, this, because option 2, for option 2, the way is what I'm confused about is it looks like we have to pay $7.44 to break even here.
Yes.
But a lot of that's related to the waste, to the recycling. So if we have to pay $20.36 every 2 months for the recycling, when the waste bill, because go down by say $14 minus whatever the because that would then put us into a really surplus position for waste.
Correct.
So the net increase for the consumer would be $7.44, not $20.44.
I put it forward as either option. If you go the $7.44, it brings the entire waste management budget to a break-even scenario, which is what you're saying. The $20.36 is that's how much it would cost if you look at recycling separately, and then the garbage collection would be continuing to generate revenue that would go into your general revenues. So you could show on the bill recycling as a separate fee of $20.36, and that would be covering the entire cost of recycling for the town of Hinton. So recycling would be break even, and waste management would be generating revenue.
Right, but the consumer would be paying $20 every 2 months extra, whereas one option he only has to pay $7 every 2 months extra.
Correct. That's why I put it in front of you as two options. You can
okay.
You can choose between those. You bet.
Why wouldn't we have recycling separated out? That'd be my preference, $20. And the waste is now break even. There's no surplus. The surplus for the waste was going to cover for this recycling. So, and then the net gain is still $7, but the recycling is separated here and the waste is here. So the waste goes down $14 because that was the surplus, and that surplus was getting paid for recycling. You see what I'm saying?
Through the mayor to all of council, I see exactly what you're saying. It's sort of you're going with the dollar amount of one, but highlighting the cost of recycling as two. You're creating a third option where waste would reduce by $14, and then you would add the recycling fee of $20, so that each customer net is a $7.44 increase.
Yeah, because I like the idea.
There's nothing wrong with what you're suggesting.
I like the idea of highlighting recycling so people know that what recycling is costing, right? They don't like the idea of going up by $20 if you don't have to. I don't mind $7, but okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Haas.
Yeah, just a quick question about, because the recycling center, we contract an organization to run that. Where currently is that payment coming? Is that coming out of contracted services, or does that come out of this budget here?
Administration.
Through the mayor to all of council, it is a contracted service and it's coming out of here.
Okay.
So yes, the cost to operate the Rowan Recycling Center is the majority of that. Well, I shouldn't say the majority. It's a large part of that 14,000. And then the other part of the 14,000 is our cardboard from commercial businesses goes to the recycle center in Edson, and we are billed for the processing of those materials. So commercial businesses do not use the Rowan Recycling Center, but they are offered some recycling services in the processing of their cardboard. And that bill for processing the cardboard shows up on the same bill because it's the same organization as the Rowan Recycle Center. So we get one bill a month for all recycling for both our recycle center and commercial businesses.
Thank you.
Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To administration, so that $20 bi-weekly or bi-monthly recycling, is that, are we offering curbside or do these people still have to take all their stuff down to the recycling area?
Administration.
Through the mayor to all of council, these costs are to provide the exact same service people are receiving today.
May I one more?
Please.
And it's at the reduced service level that they're utilizing right now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Admin, I guess my question is, you had mentioned that Councillor Taylor's walk through, I guess, of what his train of thought was, would sort of be a third option, but isn't that really just what option one is? My and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, just because I'm looking at this with relatively fresh eyes. Is option one on page 19 of 22? It says that the recommended increase in rates is $7.44 bi-monthly. And that basically is a net zero between waste and recycling total. Is that my understanding of things?
Through the mayor to all of council, yes, that is correct. $7.44 added to the 3,389 accounts would bring our waste management costs to a zero. That's correct. And so all Councillor Taylor was suggesting is that we show the recycling cost of $20.36 as an additional fee, and then we lower the existing fees on waste management by the difference of $14 and some odd cents, so that we're only increasing people's bills by $7.44, but they start to see what recycling's true cost is on their bill.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to move that council proceed with option one as indicated in the information on sewer and waste management report as reflected on page 19. And then if I could speak to that, please, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thanks. For myself, honestly, I think option number one is a nice balance because it considers the potential revenues that come out of garbage and sort of balances them against the costs of recycling. And for myself, that seems to be the right wheelhouse. And again, how it's communicated is really not my concern as far as the budget goes at this point. Although I don't disagree that a transparent communication is good. But ultimately, the thing I don't think really we can argue is that $7.44 bi-monthly to bring that to a net zero cost. It's very responsible at the end of the day. So thanks.
Thank you. And Councillor Magoon, can you just confirm that the motion up on the board that council direct administration to include revenue in the 2024 budget based on increasing waste management fees by $7.44 bi-monthly is the motion that you put to the floor?
Really, if I could then just turn to administrate, because I'm looking at option one as reflected on page 19. My reading of that would be, yep, I would just like the CAO's assurance that in fact is essentially the same thing as reflected on page 19.
CEO Panasic?
Yeah, through the mayor to members of council, the 744, because we did, we were talking about the different options. But they were kind of flipped when you went down further into the report. So we just wanted to be clear that we were talking about $7.44. So we're clear on that.
Thank you, Seo. Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor
you.
Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to be supporting the proposed motion. Reason being, I would like it presented more transparently. The net effect is still exactly the same, but doing it a different way, it's more transparent. So if this motion was defeated, I would be prepared to make a different motion that nets out exactly the same. That would be to add a $20.36 recycling fee and to reduce the waste collection fee by $12.92. That nets out exactly the same at $7.44, but it makes it more transparent that waste collection costs this much and recycling costs this much. And the other benefit that I see to doing it that way is that when the extended producer responsibility legislation comes into effect, it's a lot cleaner to be able to adjust that recycling fee than it is to try and have to adjust a generalized waste collection fee that includes recycling. So I'm not going to support this, but if it doesn't move forward, I think there's another way we can go about this where it would be more transparent for the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ostashik. And administration, logistically on this motion, if council were to pass this motion now and follow up with a second motion to have the recycling fees broken out on the user bill, would that work, or do we require a motion to create the recycling fee, as Councillor Ostashik just mentioned?
Through the chair, and Trent, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that on the tail end of this, we'll actually have to bring a bylaw forward to solidify these rates. So this is really having the budget discussion about, these numbers will correspond to the change in the budget, but I believe we actually have to bring forward the bylaw on these fees, and then we could set them accordingly. So we could, I suppose we could say to, so yes, I believe we could make actually, because they are in different spots of the budget, I think it would be easier just to adjust our budget if we could identify where those revenues are coming from. And then we'll just bring forward a bylaw that would correspond with that. So if council is interested in the option number 3, as Councillor Taylor and Ostashik spoke to, then we could certainly, I would recommend that we, if withdraw or defeat this motion and then make the corresponding motion of where that is going to be budgeted.
CAO Panasic, would there be an amendment to the motion on the table that would fit the bill?
If you give me one moment, I don't have my glasses on, so I'm having a hard time seeing that screen. Through the mayor to members of council, I believe it would just be that to include the revenue in the 2024 budget, decreasing the waste by, I believe it was $12.42, and to increase the recycling fees by $20.36. So if council would like to make that amendment, we could do that to this motion.
Thank you, CAO Panasic. Councillor Magoon, would you like to suggest a friendly amendment to your motion?
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I think it would just be cleaner at this point. I think everybody knows the direction. I'd like to withdraw if there's no objection.
Council, any objections to withdrawing this motion? Thank you, Councillor Magoon. We'll consider the motion withdrawn. Councillor Taylor is up next.
The information I'm missing is what's it, this 75 bucks a month that we pay every bi-monthly? Without considering these kind of increases, what's that gonna go up to? Just what's the expected increase? We were expecting a 4.5% increase. You know what I'm saying? Normally we get an increase to our utility rates just to keep up with costs or something. Are these increases in addition to that? 'Cause every year I've been on council, there's been some sort of increase to utility rates, you know, just a little bit.
CEO Panasic.
Through the chair to members of council. So as we budgeted, it was based on last year's rates. Now, based on, or in early 2024, we will have to sit down and have, I think, a more fulsome discussion on where those rates go, just based on a lot of information that we don't have today. So when we bring this forward to make this adjustment, we can certainly talk about all of the rates as it pertains to utilities as well. But as of right now, what we have budgeted was based on the same rates that we had in 23.
But I'm correct, usually there's some sort of increase.
CEO Panasic.
Through the mayor and members of council, I'm not sure on the history on whether we increase it every year. I know we don't have a set plan that does that. I believe that that's council's discretion on a yearly basis.
Thank you, CEO Panasic.
Yeah, just to council, my concern would be that this represents basically a 10% increase to our utility rates. I was always in favor of whatever we did to this, doing it over like a 2, possibly 3-year time to spread it out, you know, $150,000 over 2 years. Because then if we do a natural increase like we've always done, and then we do this increase, it doesn't add up to a whopping 13-14% in 1 year. That's my take. And I like the option 3 too.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion, please.
Go ahead.
I would like to move to add a recycling fee of $20.36 bi-monthly. And to reduce waste management fees by $12.92 bi-monthly. $12.92 bi-monthly. That math wrong?
Administration.
My math has it at $12.62.
If I may ask the chair's discretion, just to clarify.
Please.
So to come up with that number, I took $20.36 for the recycling fee. And then subtracted the $7.44 that we need to bring it to revenue neutral.
You're correct. Yeah,
Comes out
it's
to
92.
$12.92.
Yeah, you're right.
Correct?
It's
Okay.
$12.92. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, administration.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, yeah, $12.92 bi-monthly. To result in net zero waste management fee. If there's better wording for that, I'm open to alternative wording.
And administration, we've discussed this motion a couple of times. Does this meet the requirements that you laid out?
Through the chair, it does. And if I could make just one suggestion, just because I believe these fees are dictated through bylaw, so I don't want it to seem like we're trying to make a bylaw decision through a motion, but possibly just that council directed administration to reflect in the 2024 budget an increase corresponding with, and then the rest of the motion, if that would be acceptable to the mover.
Thank you, CEO Panasic and Councillor Ostashik.
Yep, fine by me, as long as it's okay with the rest of council.
Okay.
If I could speak to it quickly.
Yes, please.
So understanding Councillor Taylor's concern about phasing it in over a couple of years, I would agree with that if it was a significant dollar value, but I don't think that 700 or $7.44 every 2 months is significant enough to warrant phasing it in over a couple of years. I think that's probably manageable for the vast majority of the citizens who receive waste collection in Hinton. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ostashik. So council, the motion on the floor is that council direct administration to reflect in the 2024 budget an increase to recycling fee of $20.36 bi-monthly and to reduce waste management fees by $12.92 bi-monthly to result in a net zero waste management fee. Councillor Taylor,
I'd like to make an amendment to that if I could, please.
go right ahead.
I'd like to direct administration that this increase be spread over 2 years.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. The amendment on the floor is that this increase be spread over 2 years. Council, discussion.
Well, do I get to speak to it?
You can speak to it, Councillor Taylor.
God bless. Thank you. You know, to us, maybe it isn't a big deal, but based on the information we received, remember the information we received where we have 97% of the town think that the cost of living is high. And then we had the income levels for the seniors in town and how they were surprisingly low. A lot of these folks, this kind of increase is high. So taking a 10% increase to this, in addition to every other kind of increase they're going to be facing in the future, starts to add up. And these are the kind of folks that I think we have to be concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My only concern about spreading it out over 2 years, I mean, I have no problem with that philosophically, that's fine. My only concern is what effect that would have on the utility bylaw when it does come before us. Because we'd have to take into account this plus potential cost increases and try and estimate what those are going to be over this year and next year. It's not a hill I'll die on either way. I'm fine if it's all in 1 year or over 2 years is fine. I just think it might be complicated to roll that into the utility bylaw when it comes to us each year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ostashik. And I'll speak to this amendment as well if there's nothing further from council. My understanding of this increase is that it will be offset by a subsequent decrease in taxes and administration. Is that correct?
Through members of council, yes, that's what I was going to mention. This may not affect everybody quite the same as a tax rate increase, but all the revenue generated from this avenue will be offset by the increase in taxes. But utilities does affect people and organizations a little bit differently, just because everybody has utilities. Not everybody pays taxes, right? There are a number of exempt organizations that do not pay taxes. So it just affects people differently, but the dollar amount is always going to be the same, and it'll be offset through a little over 1% in the tax rate increase.
Thank you, CEO Panasic. Council, anything further? Then we'll call the question on the amendment that the fee increase be spread over 2 years. And this is just a vote on the amendment at this time, not on the original motion. Councillor Magoon, did you want to speak to this? Councillor Magoon.
Really just a point of inquiry to the administration. I need to dig at something the CAO just said. CAO, can you confirm that the increase in monies collected from the net zero approach will have the effect of, and I think I heard you say this, but I need to make sure, of collecting approximately, or needing to collect approximately 1% less in taxation? Is that correct?
CEO Panasic.
Through the chair to members of council, yes, I believe with the option that has been presented, this will approximately that'll equate to about $154,311, so a little bit over 1%.
Thank you, CEO Panasic. Any follow-up, Councillor Magoon?
Yeah, then I would like to speak to it. Actually, that changes how I think I was going to vote on this in the first place. I was very much at first aligned with Councillor Taylor's thinking that it would probably be better to sort of spread this out over the course of 2 years. But if the net effect is actually that it would reduce overall taxation by approximately 1%, then I am wholeheartedly in favor of collecting it on the waste management side of things. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, the reason that I think I understand why that works is right now that waste management isn't full cost recovery. So because we're not collecting enough on waste management to cover all the costs of running it, it has to get subsidized through taxation. So that's why making this full cost recovery takes it off the taxation side, if I'm correct. I think administration's nodding, so I think that's a reasonable understanding. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Councillor Taylor.
I'll be voting against my own motion. Thanks.
Okay, anything further from council on the amendment? Then we'll call the question that the original motion be amended to state that the increase be allocated over 2 years. Councillors, please vote now. Councillors Taylor and Hawes are both voting against by hand. Who's missing here? Councillor Stashik, have you voted? Okay, well, that is defeated unanimously then. There we go. Mine was late. Okay, now we can we get the original motion back up there, please? So councillor, reminder, the motion on the floor is the council direct administration to reflect in the 2024 budget an increase to recycling fee of $20.36 bi-monthly and to reduce waste management fees by $12.92 bi-monthly to result in a net zero waste management. There we are. Council discussion, Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only change I'd like to see made is to take out where it says increase to recycling fee. We don't currently have a recycling fee. Yeah, so it would have to be add a recycling fee or create a recycling fee, something to that wording, I would think.
And I believe that was actually the original wording to the motion. So if we could change the word increase back to add, that would be sufficient. Add a recycling fee. And I believe that is in line with the original wording of the motion. Council, any further discussion? Councillor Taylor.
So our budget, our draft budget will start reflecting this, and then we do the utility rate bylaw before we do the tax rate bylaw.
CEO Panasic.
Through the chair. So based on this motion, we will adjust the revenues accordingly. So that will offset it by that 154,000. And then early in or prior to those midterm budget adjustments, I believe around that time we'll come forward and we'll have a discussion on the bylaw and the enabling bylaw itself to make those amendments prior to officially setting the tax rates, with all of our other, information that we get at that time.
Thank you, Say Panasic. Council, anything further? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question, the council direct administration to reflect in the 2024 budget and an addition or in the 2024 budget to add a recycling fee of $20.36 bi-monthly and to reduce waste management fees by $12.92 bi-monthly to result in a net zero waste management fee. Councilors, please vote now. Councillor Hawes and Taylor are voting by hand in favor. And that motion carries unanimously. Administration, next step, please.
So this will take us to the second utility information item you asked us to prepare, and that was on bulk water rates. We've put forward here our how our bulk water currently works. People have to come in and they have to put $100 deposit down. They get an account. These accounts are actually charged monthly, not bi-monthly. And currently each account pays $44.20 to have an account open. And that gets them 5 cubes of water, and then anything over 5 cubes of water, there's a domestic rate and a commercial rate of domestic rate is $2.08, and your commercial rate is $7.81.5. These rates are actually, well, at least on the commercial side, at or higher than our municipal comparators. Some of the issues we have around the bulk water sales are in the opening and closing of accounts, and people only being able to do that during business hours. So one of the things that we'd want to bring forward probably in for the 2025 budget would be to actually add a credit card payment system to the bulk water so that anyone could buy water at any time without having an account. I think that would solve quite a few issues. But having reviewed all this, we're not recommending any changes at this time. When we talked about the lower rate compared to our municipal neighbors, that's actually on the commercial metered water. So when a commercial business pays for their bi-monthly water bill, they get 50 cubic meters of water bi-monthly with their payment. And then when they go over 50 cubes, they're charged $1.23 per additional cube of water. That rate is extremely low compared to our municipal comparators, but we're not recommending changing it at this time because one of the largest users is the pulp mill, and they're a partner in the production of water, and we don't think it'd be appropriate to change that rate at this time.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Councillor Magoon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Mr. McLaughlin, just a question on the recommended credit card payment system. Do we anticipate that if we were to add that payment system at the station, that we would have an uptick as it is in terms of users or the amount of water purchased?
Mr. McLaughlin.
Through the mayor to all the council. Obviously, it's a guess how big of impact that would be, but I believe that there would be increased water sales because I think there's a large amount of the oil field sector not knowing when they need water, and they will go wherever they can get it to get it. And if that means traveling a further distance in the middle of the night, that's what they'll do. So I think you could increase your sales by having that available. The other thing that we did notice when going through this is that we have had a fairly big swing in our water sales over the course of a given year. Our 5-year average was $239,000. However, as of looking at it today, our 223 amount is only $140,000. So there's, we're going to be down for the year. So I think that's another thing that to consider, that it's not a large dollar amount. So making a change to the bulk water rates today wouldn't generate a lot of extra money.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
McLaughlin.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Counselor Chambers.
Thank you through the mayor to administration. So with this credit card processing system, and first of all, thank you for this information. That's very clear and concise. I think it's well done. Is the hope that we would still continue to have the billing system where people can come in, set up their accounts, pay the $44 amount to have their account open, but there would be a secondary option of a credit card for on the fly water users that were from oil field or whatever that looked like, but they would still kind of run in tandem? Because I worry just a bit about if everything was to go straight to credit card, would we end up losing revenue because we wouldn't have that base fee of the $44?
Through the mayor to all of council. Yes, the credit card systems that I am familiar with, you can still have an account system as well. They corresponding, and you would want that because you want to maintain the domestic lower rate for people who live in town and have cisterns. And so those people would continue to have accounts and use a PIN code rather than the Visa, but at least the credit card would allow anyone to buy water when they need it.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Counselor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So when people come here to the town office to pay a bill and they use their credit card, they're charged an administration fee. I don't know, 2-3% on their credit card. Is that same going to happen with this?
Mr. McLaughlin.
Through the mayor to all of council, yes, and we would have to bring forward what those charges would be. That would all be in a proper CPP for the 2025 budget year when we put that together. But we just, you'd asked us to put it this together, and internally we had already talked a little bit about the idea of having a system, so we wanted to take this opportunity to introduce that idea now, and we'll bring it forward again about this time next year.
Thank you.
Counselor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't believe there's a consensus request put forward yet, is there? Okay, I would like to make the consensus request to for administration to include a credit card payment system upgrade for the bulk water station in the 20. Can I ask a question though?
Go right ahead.
Can it be in the 2024 budget? Does it have to be in 2025?
Mr. McLaughlin.
Through the mayor to all of council, we just thought for the late stages that we're in, we didn't want to introduce new capital projects at this stage. If that's something council wants us to do, sure, certainly it's something we could do. But we just out of respect for the process and where we're at with it, we thought we'd leave it to 2025.
Okay, thank you. So I will do the recommended option in the 2025 budget. If I could speak to it.
Please.
I think this option's great. And I too agree that I think this will increase bulk water sales pretty significantly. The way it is now, if there's an out of town water hauler and they have to get potable water for a rig and they don't have an account set up here and it's after hours or weekend or something, Director McLaughlin's completely correct. They'll just go to Edson and get it. So if there was a credit card option that they could get it here, I'm sure they would. And even just speaking for myself and the business that I work with, we had a account to purchase bulk water and I believe we've let it expire because we used it so infrequently. But if there was a credit card option that when we did need it, we had the option available, even our company would utilize it. So I think it's a great idea. Speaking additionally to it though, and the option to maybe do it in 2024, if the cost isn't extremely insignificant or it's extremely significant and administration could manage it within their current funds that are available, I would like to see it implemented in 2024, not necessarily come as a 2025 budget item. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Ostashik. Counselor Taylor.
What would the cost of that be?
Mr. McLaughlin.
We've included an estimate in this information of $25,000.
Oh, no, 25.
That's what we think it would cost.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Anything further, Councillor Taylor? Council, the motion on the floor is that council direct administration to include a credit card payment system upgrade for the bulk water station in 2025 budget. Is there any further discussion? Oh, CAO Panasic.
Through the mayor to members of council, the timing is completely at council's discretion, but if this is something that council does want to pursue, instead of 2025 budget, we can certainly do it to direct administration to bring a report forward prior to midterm budget adjustments, and this would likely be on the capital side. Our director of corporate services hasn't shook her head, but this would likely be a capital item that we could bring forward prior to midterm budget adjustments if this is something that we want to implement in 2024.
Thank you, CAO Panasic. Councillor Stashik, would you be open to the friendly amendment to the timeline, or?
Yep, I was just gonna suggest to add some wording to say, at or before the 2025 budget. Then that gives administration the option to bring it forward earlier if they're able to.
Any objections from council? Seeing none, we'll make that friendly amendment. Councillor Taylor.
Well, I'm not going to object, but to me, like if to me, was it $25,000? That's not enough to worry about. Like if we do that and we do this as soon as we can, we're probably going to make that up right away. So I don't know why we would fiddle around. Do it in the 25 budget and then add it to the capital, add it to the capital. That's what my preference would be. Let's not fiddle around.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Magoon.
Yeah, I'd actually like to make an amendment that we change it. Let me just have a second to reword it. Direct administration to include a credit card payment system upgrade for the bulk water station to be included in the capital 2024 budget. And then we would strike, obviously, the other piece. And obviously, I think the rest of council has spoke to it enough. I think there is definitely room for it in the 24 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Administration, is that the amendment section now, or do you still have to start another one? That's the amendment?
Yeah, through the chair. Yes, that's the amendment.
Okay. So council, we have an amendment on the floor that the wording be changed to include this in the capital 2024 budget. Any discussion? We'll call the question on the amendment.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sorry, Mr. McLaughlin.
Through the mayor, through the council, I'd like to suggest that we actually include the $25,000 amount just for clarity so that the amount is in the capital budget.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Councillor Magoon we're okay with that. Any objections from council? Seeing none, so we'll add that dollar value into the amendment, please. Thank you, administration. So councillor, we are once again on the amendment only that the $25,000 number be added along with to be included in the capital 2024 budget, striking out the 2025 budget line. Council, any discussion? And we'll call the question. Councillors on the amendment, please vote now. Councillor Haas and Councillor Taylor both in favor by hand. We were told to expect issues. That motion carries unanimously. So we are back to the original motion or the amended motion now. which is the exact same thing, yeah. That council direct administration to include a credit card payment system upgrade for the bulk water station of $25,000 to be included in the capital 2024 budget. Council, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question as soon as it's ready. Councilors, please vote now. Councillor Taylor and Councillor Hawes in favor by hand. And that motion carries unanimously. Administration, are there any further items?
Through the chair, I believe that concludes all of the follow-up action items that were directed from the last meeting. So if we go back to the operating budget, based on the changes that have been made, I believe we are looking at looking to raise an increase of 449,325, and that equates to a 3.3% tax rate increase.
Thank you, CAO Panasic. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that council approve the 2024 draft operating budget as, and then I'm going to look for a little help, as amended, because we did work on it this evening, admin.
CAO Panasic.
Through the mayor, yes, that's correct.
And if I could speak to that, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
I want to thank a lot of hard work on both sides of the table to administration and council. Administration, thanks for taking some feedback from council, going and doing the research and then bringing it back to us so we could make some fully informed choices. And also we know that the whole budgetary process is this yearly, gentle push-pull where we're trying to find that happy medium. So thanks a lot for your side of things. I would like to send out a special thanks to my fellow councilors, especially those who are really good at getting into the, the nitty-gritty, dirty line items and coming up with those ideas. I think it was excellent and gave us some good points to discuss this year. And I mean, having come into this initially with a 16% look at things, and now we're down to a 3.3% potential increase to taxation. Given the fiscal realities of some of our municipal comparators, that's a huge win. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. The motion on the floor is that council approve the 2024 draft operating budget as amended. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm all for not high taxes, but I want to talk to administration. Taxes pay for operating, taxes pay for capital projects. Are we compromising anything looking ahead as far as capital projects go?
CAO Panasic.
Through the chair to members of council, I guess the short answer is yes. Based on our asset management plan, I believe we were, my apologies, I could bring it up and speak to a few specifics. Yeah, through the mayor to members of council, I believe we were looking at a difference of around 8.6 million, but that is specific to future capital projects. But I think that number is going to change, and there's a lot of things that I think will change based on potential new assets that are coming in the future. We, as we spoke to before, we are planning a more of a strategy discussion on a lot of these financial or future items. We do have our contributions and our reserves comparatively to other communities are very light, and the amount that we contribute is light. Over time, I think that'll have to be reconciled in order to adequately fund all of our assets when they come due in the future. But that's, I think, it's a very large strategy discussion and something that happens over a long period of time.
Thank you, CAO Panasic. Councillor Rice, any
So you
follow-up?
know what my concern is, I want a nice level of taxation. But I think we have to look down the road at what some of our capital costs are gonna be. We have aging infrastructure that has to be dealt with. You look at other municipalities in Canada, they didn't deal with them, so now they're paying right now to take care of their water needs, their infrastructure. So I don't know if we have to make a decision tonight, this month, but I don't know if tonight is the night that I want to make the decision on this operating budget. I think I have a few more questions I need answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Councillor Chambers.
Through the mayor to administration. So am I correct in my assumption that this current 3.3% tax rate increase is before any knowledge of what our potential assessment increase is and before any knowledge of what our surplus is? So there could still be an opportunity to allocate funds, or we could potentially have more funds at that March date, like you said, that we'd have to deal with. Is that still the assumption?
Ms. Bourbeau.
That is correct. If our assessment growth has increased and there's higher numbers, then I think that would need to be addressed through the spring budget adjustments, because if assessments do go up, we could have a much lower than 3.3% tax rate increase, which potentially could be harmful to the longevity and sustainability.
Thank you, Ms. Bourbeau. Councillor Chambers, any follow-up? Councillor Taylor.
I take comfort in approving this right now in spite of the CAO's comments. The two reasons. One is that we've got $200,000 set aside for underground infrastructure assessment. And I think, before we seriously start spending a ton of money on underground infrastructure in the asset management plan, we really want to know what's there. And we've got a plan for 3 years in the capital budget to spend that over 3 years. So let's see what's wrong before we start getting too concerned about spending a ton of money there. The other factor is that, apparently our tax rate is a little bit light in comparison to other towns, but we've got to factor in what I call the industrial factor within our town boundaries, that we have a big industrial plant that pays 25% of taxes, that we have a $75 per month benefit on the utility bills because of that, which adds up to $900. And when you factor both those amounts in and you put that into the information that we've been given by administration, we are within 10% of what the comparator towns are in the way of taxes, if you add in the industrial factor into the town. So it's not as light as you would think it is because of those factors. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Magoon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And speaking to it one last time, we have an obligation to pass a budget at the very least before the end of the year. And additionally, what we don't need to be focused on at this point in time, I mean, certainly when we want to use it as an indicator, is that, what we think is the percentile, tax increase at this point in time, that will change depending on, conditions like assessed values of properties and those sorts of things. And when we do that spring adjustment, when we look at things again, as we get closer to, that's the chance to say, okay, well, here's an opportunity. We actually are looking to collect more than we were anticipating. Well, you know what, maybe now's the time to look at which reserves do we want to allocate that to, and hopefully we'll have a little bit clearer understanding of what some of our spring realities are when it comes to capital investitures. So thank you.
Councillor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to add on what everybody else is saying about spring adjustments and when the tax rate bylaw comes before us, that is the opportunity to take a look at things. And regardless of what assessments do, and people tend to focus on what the tax rate percentage increase is. But the reality is how many more dollars per year are they paying? That's the opportunity where we have to take a look at that and make sure that the rate increase matches the dollars that we budgeted for through the capital and operating budgets. And if we want to make changes then, that's the time, that's the opportunity to do them. But yeah, historically and the format that I support is that we try and set a tax rate increase that matches the dollars that were budgeted and not try and stay focused on maintaining that rate increase. Thank you.
Counselor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I know we have to pass an operating budget prior to the end of the year, but it could be an interim operating budget. Doesn't have to be this one. What are the negative impacts of an interim operating as opposed to an operating budget?
Ms. Bourbeau.
I can share my philosophy. Police CAO Canasic supports my philosophy. I do feel that an interim budget doesn't provide administration with the strength to carry on in the new year and make those plans, get the bids out for tender and do all of those important things early in the year. We're on, even right now, still a little bit far behind on some of them because the program, excuse me, the project was maybe not in last year's capital budget. So I just find having an interim budget, it often draws everything out. It leaves a lot of uncertainty for administration and moving forward. And that's just my personal preference. And I offer up CAO Canasic to add anything he wishes.
CAO Panasic.
Yeah, through the mayor, I'll reflect what Ms. Bourbeau said, but really what it does is it condenses the period of time that you have to execute on a lot of these different items. So it just becomes more challenging for administration. You can certainly do it. It's just, instead of having 12 months to execute on that budget and on those projects, it becomes 10 months or whatever the case may be. So it just gets a little bit more difficult. And then it's really just maintaining the bare minimum for a few months before you can really get going. So it does just put you behind a little bit.
Counselor Race, follow up.
You know what? I want to say thank you. I appreciate those answers. I really do. And I'm very proud of council because we really, really do want to take care of this town. And then given what you say, I will support this motion.
Thank you, Counselor Race. Counselor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All I was going to say is, we've sat through several sessions of this, had ample, lots of opportunity to bring forward changes that we may wanted to see supported by our fellow councillors. That said, though, if there's discomfort, if you're not comfortable in moving this forward, if there's other changes that councillors want to see, more debate, more discussion, this isn't the end. You can make a motion to postpone this decision until later in the meeting, until a different date, whatever. If you've got stuff that you want to bring forward, you still can. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Ostashik. Counselor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know what does give me comfort is knowing that we do have that midterm adjustment or assessment. Hey, today is not the end of the road. We're still going to be having conversations on this. Changes can be made and I'm comfortable with that. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Race. Counselor Taylor.
I've done 6 of these. I don't think I've sat through one where we finished by December 30th ever. So, get it finalized like this. And I think that's first rate. The Canadian Howe Institute rates, a couple dozen municipalities across the country on budgeting practices. And one of the ratings is how soon the budget gets done before the year ends, so that you got your thoughts on how you're going to spend the money. You don't finalize it like a third the way through the year when the year is already gone and you're still finalizing the budget. No, this is A+ according to the Howe Institute for budgeting practices.
Thank you, Counselor Taylor. And your new mayor will absolutely take credit for that. So, council, a reminder that the motion on the floor is that council approve the 2024 draft operating budget as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we're going to call the question that council approve the 2024 draft operating budget as amended. Councilors, please vote now. Counselor Haas and Taylor both in favor by hand, and that motion is carried unanimously.
Through the mayor to members of council, I believe we still have the capital budget and that would be as amended as well.
Thank you, CEO Panasic. Counselor Ostashik.
Mr. Mayor, that's exactly what I was going to bring forward. I'd like to move that council approve the 2024 capital budget as amended.
Thank you, Counselor Ostashik. Do you want to speak to it while it's still being written on the board?
Just quickly, yeah. Again, thank you to administration for all the work in bringing the capital projects forward and council for all your consideration and lively debate and discussion in moving them forward or not. And I think we developed a responsible capital budget to go along with our operating budget. And I look forward to seeing this one move forward as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Ostashik. Counselor Taylor.
Yeah, can you help me a little? I mean, I'll probably vote for this, but 7.2 million for a 7.2 million for a capital budget. And so how's that going to affect our reserves for 2024? What's the projection there? Like how much of that's coming from grants? How much of that's coming out of reserves? And what's our overall reserve now? What's our overall reserve going to be at the end of the year?
Ms. Bourbeau.
Through the chair to all of council. I haven't completed funding all of the projects and we're still working on closing off the 2023. Initially, I believe it's going to be about 2/3 MSI funding for the 2024 capital budget, with the remaining coming from reserve. I will have those more accurate numbers for you prior to spring adjustments. There'll be full reporting on that.
So is our 2.7 we're going to put in over the next year, is that going to put us into maintaining the reserves? Or is that going to put us into a reserve reduction?
Through the chair, I believe it will maintain the reserves.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Counselor Taylor. Thank you, Ms. Bourbeau. Council, the motion on the floor is that council and, oh, well, can we get that back up on the screen there, please? Thank you. That council approve the 2024 capital budget as amended. Any further discussion? Then we'll call the question. Councilors, please vote now. Counselor Taylor and Haas voting in favor by hand. And that motion carries unanimously. Well done, council and administration. Administration, anything further?
Nothing further from us.
Roger that. Brings us to item 4 on our agenda. Counselor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that we adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Counselor Magoon. Council, the motion is to adjourn. Councilors, please vote now. Counselor Haas and Taylor voting by hand in favor. Motion carries unanimously. Good work, everybody. Have a good night. And you're not even going to miss your dinner. Straight to Rojo.
Geez, Jordan, I guess you were good for that.
Yeah, I was thinking,
Right?